this video, we are going to go over the resin basics and all the things you need to be successful to do your resin work if you've decided to get into it. So I'm gonna hop right in here and show you my supply list and what I use for everything. So a lot of the times I will resin onto a board. I love the gallery thickness 1.5 inch birchwood panels. I like to buy the Made in Canada to support the Canadian economy. This brand happens to be Apollon. And what you do with this panel is you can mount it with UPO and paint on it. You can mount your already painted picture on here, and then you're going to put some tuck tape around it so that the resin can slide around it. So tuck tape is my favorite. You can also use painter's tape, but I find it less successful than the tuck tape. So once again, this is a plain piece of UPO paper. I could easily mount a painting on here, and if you want to learn how to do that, there's a video in my video list on how to mount this UPO paper. Okay, so we're gonna move these out of the way because they're a little big, so they will go out of screen. Actually, I'll keep this birch panel in the back, can hold some stuff up. Okay, so the next thing is a leveler. I really like having my leveler to make sure that the table is level. A lot of the time your table will not be level, depending on what part of the table you use it on as well. Sometimes if you're in the center, it can be less level or more level. I find that with the table that I use, the left-hand side of the table, as I'm facing north, has the most level part, but everything's different. I always use my leveler, and if something isn't level, I just use either a popsicle stick under my cups or anything like that. So I'll show you how to do that near the end. I also have a light here. Unfortunately, I just noticed that I had left it on, so there's no batteries in it, but we use this light to use as an extra light for our resin. I like to go over it and make sure there aren't any hairs. If there are some hairs, a good idea is to use a toothpick to take the hairs out, and you want to make sure that you look at very carefully at your resin work and cover it afterwards, or just leave it without anybody going near it. If you have blown air in your house, forced air, you want to cover it with something. I personally have water heating in my house that's hot water, so I don't get that air blowing around, so I don't cover my work, and it's okay. So yes, toothpick, very simple and useful. Also, you're gonna need a couple of cups to do your resin work in. I love using these cups from the Wholesale Club. They have words on them, and little marks all over them, so I go and use them as where the measuring points are. I also write white and black on my cups, because if you over pour one and you turn your back and you go and you do the other one, then sometimes you end up forgetting which cup is which. It happens. So writing white and black on your cup is a 6-second insurance policy to make sure you measure properly. The most important thing with any resin is mixing and measuring. So you are going to want to mix your resin exactly 1:1, and you are going to want to mix it for 2 minutes in one cup, and then pour it in the other cup, 2 minutes in that cup. Okay, tuck tape, we talked about that before. That's what I use for my birch panel. So you can buy that at Canadian Tire or Home Depot, places like that. Here are some of the items that I use to either to tint my resin or add some effects. I have a whole bunch of these things here, so I want to make sure that you see them all. And of course I had to drop one of them. Oh, here we go. So I have the Resin Tint by Art Resin, which I love. Art Resin is one of my favorite brands, so they are in the top. So this is one thing you can tint your resin with. It's very, very thick. You can't see through the resin. It is an opaque mixture. Same with acrylic. Acrylic you can mix in your resin, but you have to be careful because it's a polymer. If you add too much, it's going to affect the quality of your resin. Alcohol inks are also great. You want to make sure that you don't use more than 10% inks in any of your mixtures. That is your insurance policy to make sure that works out. I have a 15 ml bottle of alcohol ink and also the 4 ounce bottle, which is I think a half a cup. Yeah, and so this is a metallic, so obviously you shake that metallic up. There's a little ball in there. You can hear it. And that is some more things you can color your resin with. Also mica powder. So I have graphite and light brown here. It's also called soap dye or mica powder, and you can use it for makeup applications, but for this, it mixes really well in the resin and you won't see it. These little glass glitter crystals by Ice Resin are really nice. They create a nice effect. You can embellish your resin with pretty much anything because resin is the most ultimate glue, so you can stick things on top if you like. Also, you're going to want a stir stick, so I like a good strong stir stick that's almost like a rubber spatula for my art resin. And I use this guy sometimes if I'm trying to get a hair out and it's a bigger piece, and the little toothpick I feel like I can't get in there. This is also good for manipulating your resin around with. I also use it to balance my cups. And then straws are also good to blow your resin around, but just be careful. People are blowing in and out of these straws really quickly, and it can cause lightheadedness. So don't do it if you have any breathing problems or you get lightheaded easily. These are some mixing cups if you wanted to have different colors for your resin. These are the cups that I like to use. Once again, Wholesale Club. These are the little popsicle sticks that I get from the dollar store, or you can get them also at craft stores. These are another cup that you can use, and they are not see-through, but they're really good if you're trying to do very precise pours where you're trying to put it somewhere. You can actually bend these cups and make it do like thinner applications. So that's what these guys are good for, just paper Dixie cups. Dimethicone or silicone. If you do use this in your resin, I don't use it too often, only in some applications, but when I do, 1 drop per cup of resin, like when you mix your resin in these little cups here, you want no more than 1 drop. It's going to affect the integrity of the resin if you use any more than a drop. Also, to get rid of the bubbles in your resin after you're done pouring, this is a Creme Brulee torch, which you can get for quite cheap at Canadian Tire or any kitchen stores like that. It's a little butane, and I actually don't use the torch. I prefer to use a heat gun. So I have the heat gun here, and it's a Wagner heat gun. It's about $40 at Home Depot. I like that it has the 2 settings and that this button goes like this instead of a click on and off button, because this is a very, this button gets really abused by the resin. So this seems to be the brand that doesn't jam up when you use the little button. Of course, you can always wipe off your heat gun after, but sometimes you forget. So there's that. You also want to use gloves. So I have 2 brands here. This is the Costco brand, and this is what you can find at Wholesale Club. I personally prefer the nitrile gloves a little bit more. You're gonna wanna make sure that they don't have any powder on them. These ones are powder-free from Wholesale Club. They're just kind of a they're vinyl, so these are vinyl. And then these are nitrile from Kirkland. So some gloves here. So I'm just gonna leave 1 glove up so that you can remember that. And you're going to want a respirator depending on what type of resin you use. Better safe than sorry, you can use it with all resin, but the art resin that I use it has no VOCs, no BPAs. It's been certified by the FDA and by third party to be safe to use indoors. If you are sensitive, just use this respirator anyways, so use at your own risk. Any of the other brands that you find, like at Michael's or anything like that, those brands are going to need a respirator while you're doing the work. It has a lot of odor in the air, and the odor does stay for a little bit. So once you're done that resining, you have to let those odors dissipate. Another thing that I like to use is this sander to sand my paintings. So after I do my resin work on a piece like this, I would be pulling off the tuck tape, and then after I pull off this tuck tape, I am going to sand the edges to make sure that they're all nice and clean. And this is a mouse sander. I got it at Home Depot. You can probably get one at Canadian Tire. They're all around the $30 to $40 mark. I also use the removal. This is a coarse or removal grade, 80 grit sandpaper. Because we're removing resin, we're not trying to finish it to the nicest, smoothest texture on the sides of your resin piece. That's okay. What we really want to make sure is that we remove all of it off. So these are going to be the sandpaper that you use. If there's another kind that you like to use, you're more than welcome to leave comments for me. I just think that this is a really good starting point. This is so cheap here, and just getting a handful of these is good. Now on to the, well, I'll do the garbage bag as well. So you're gonna need a garbage bag, and this is going to line your table. So you wanna make sure that your table is lined, and you want to make sure that your floors are protected. So that's another thing. You're also gonna need alcohol, because if you do spill some alcohol on your floor if you do spill resin on your floor or get it anywhere, it's the alcohol that's going to be able to get that out for you. So it's really good to have some alcohol on hand and to wash your floor wherever you've dropped the resin. And it can even remove it when it's partially set. So it's helpful that way. Once it's set, it's very difficult to get off, and I do recommend using a scraper. And so we also have the garbage bag, and then finally we need the resin itself. So I'm going to show you the brand that I use, which is Art Resin. So I'm just gonna set this here, and I'm gonna knock everything over in the process, but that's okay. So Art Resin brand is awesome. So you have a resin and a hardener, you have a white cap and a black cap. That's pretty much like all of them. Make sure that the black goes on the black and that the white goes on the white, because if I put the black cap back on the wrong one, I can easily fuse these together where I can't get the lids off again. Another thing to remember is to close the lid quite tightly, because resin that is unset and the hardener, we want to make sure that no oxygen is getting to it. Oxygen is not a friend of the resin when it's in its dual parts like this. I'm going to show you a couple of other brands of resin that are out there but I don't use, but I want to show you. I had bought this guy and I still haven't really used it too much. This is a Pour-On Envirotex. It does the job, but make sure that you wear your respirator with this. This does have the VOCs and BPAs, and it does yellow faster. So, you know, it's important to research your resins. Art Resin isn't the only brand out there that is food safe and no VOCs and BPAs, but it is the one that I like to get. It's very easy to find. And other than that, it's nice to have a little bit of paper towels near you. Just make sure you protect yourself. The final thing I will say is hazmat suits. You can use hazmat suits to keep all the dust from your clothes. You can see that I have a cat hair here. It happens, and it'll come off your clothes and onto your resin. So if you're really trying to get that glassy look, hazmat suits are the way to go. Other than that, I think that is it for the resin video.